All right. This is a special episode.
Yeah.
This is a special movie episode.
Mm-hmm.
We watched, or I watched, James didn't do his homework, To Catch a Thief, a classic movie in bag world.
So classic, starring Grace Kelly, of course.
Grace Kelly.
An Alfred Hitchcock classic.
Yeah. Well, let's do a little background on this movie for our listeners. If you haven't seen it, if it's been a while since you've seen it, this is an Alfred Hitchcock film, but it's not your typical Hitchcock film. It's not like, when I think of Hitchcock, I think of like The Birds, and I think of like dark, moody, psycho thrillers.
Yeah.
Exactly. This is just like a French Riviera cat and mouse romance, you know?
Yeah.
Totally different.
Yeah.
And I think, maybe it was I don't know if it's really considered one of his better films.
Me either, but I think it's definitely iconic because of the cinematography and the fashion. So, which is why we're here to talk about it.
Right, exactly. I think it might have won or at least got nominated for an Oscar in cinematography, which, on the French Riviera, like, how can you go wrong?
Seriously.
Beautiful.
Beautiful atmosphere, beautiful scenery, and two beautiful people.
But what makes this film important in bag world is costume designer Edith Head, who has worked with Hitchcock before and worked on this film, purchased, although I don't believe used, I don't remember seeing them in the film, Hermès Kelly's as costumes. And this was the first instance where Grace Kelly encountered this bag. Although back then, of course, it wasn't called the Kelly. It was called the Sac à Dépêche.
Right.
And she loved it, and the rest is history.
Yeah. That's what I was about to say is the Kelly wasn't featured, but it was the first time that Grace Kelly was encountered with it. And also they bought a couple of them, or borrowed, I'm not sure which, for the costumes, but never used them. And then the second piece is, if you don't know Edith Head, she is also the inspiration for Edna Mode in The Incredibles. So.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's fabulous.
They used her hair, they used her vibe, and they used her kind of caricature. So, if you've seen The Incredibles, you know Edith Head.
Amazing. I love that. But yeah, so this movie came out in 1955. 1956, the following year, was when Grace Kelly met Prince Rainier of Monaco, and they got married, and she became pregnant and was photographed on the cover of, I believe it was Life magazine. Who knows? Yeah. A photograph that was produced in many different places of her holding a box Kelly 35 in front of her baby bump.
Yeah.
And then the rest is history. I said the rest is history earlier, but that's really,
Well, that's the moment that really, before Hermès adopted the term Kelly, it was first colloquially known as the Kelly because of this baby bump picture. It went all over the world. People were obsessed with it and had to have this bag. So eventually Hermès caught on and named the bag after her. But like you said, I
believe that was 1977.
Yeah, it was after a long time, too long.
Maybe 20 years.
Hermès finally caught on, But yeah, that's kind of, it's interesting that this movie really ties into Hermès history in such a unique way.
Yeah. And it also stars Cary Grant, who was gay, and was quite the Hollywood movie star. I thought it was really interesting in reading about this, how like reluctant people are to say that Cary Grant was gay, even though it's so obvious. Like, he lived with this other actor in Hollywood for 12 years. The two of them had 7 failed marriages between them. Like, oh my
goodness.
And if you look at how these marriages went, situation. I mean, it's unbelievable. And people will still be like, twice in Cary Grant's career, his sexuality was questioned. It's like, there's
questioned
no
by
question.
Who?
Yeah.
What does that even mean? Questioned
it's so
by
crazy.
Who?
Just because all of the media you read, like all of the articles and journalism back then, was so controlled by the studio system that there was no mention of it. So it's like
Right.
there is no proof
Right.
except for all of the proof that there is. But yeah, they were both of these actors, Grace Kelly and Cary Grant, were renowned, or quite well known for their dramatic transatlantic accents in particular,
Yes.
which gives this movie a very old-timey,
Yeah.
silver screen flair.
Yeah. And that's a very, of the time period, the 20s, 30s, and 40s, newscasters, radio broadcasters, and actors and actresses had to learn this transatlantic accent in order to be kind of accepted into the art of cinema and TV. Well, not TV at that point, but you know what I'm saying, radio.
Right. And it came out in 1955, but it takes place, I would say, like probably like 49, maybe a couple of years after the war is my guess. Maybe early 50s, but like pretty contemporary with the time it came out, I think.
Yes.
It takes place mostly in Monaco. And basically the background of the story is that the main character, John Roby, the cat burglar, is before the war he was a known burglar, and he went to prison, and then he fought in the war, and now he's out on parole, but there's a bunch of burglaries that are happening that look like he did it, and they think he did it, and he is trying to catch the thief who did it so he can prove that he didn't do it. That's, I think, the primary arc. But in doing this, he meets Grace Kelly, Frances Stevens or something, I think is her name. And, well, they have a lovely little romance. Yes, it's quite interesting. But I think, since they are both known for these transatlantic accents, I thought it was interesting that, like, Grace Kelly grew up very wealthy and studied and practiced to speak the way that she speaks. And Cary Grant was actually from England and came to the US maybe when he was like 18 or 20 or something.
Young man.
Yeah. And so his is like a real transatlantic accent, you could say.
Well, part of that is he very, very likely in his life before coming to the United States probably learned received pronunciation. That's kind of their standard. The transatlantic accent was more of an American thing to seem more sophisticated, easier to understand, but also draw bridges between the United States and the UK. But on that side of the pond, received pronunciation, which is kind of the Queen's English slightly, was kind of the standard. So I'm sure that's why he still brings that received pronunciation into his American cinema work. It's fascinating to me. Accents.
Yeah, that is fascinating. I love accents. I love all of the different English accents that people have. Not English, but like people who speak English, like Australian, Kiwi, South African, all of those good ones.
Yeah, do them all. Can you do the accents, Max?
I can't, but I could say them in their accent, Australian.
Sure.
Kiwi. South African.
I do like the South African accent. It's very, very friendly, and I think that's because of the Dutch influence. It's got that, like, Swedish chef thing going on.
Yeah. I like it. It's funky. I like how Chris Lilly does all of the different accents quite well.
He's so good at it. He's very good at the South African accent, in my view. I'm not an accent expert, but I think he does an amazing South African.
Oh, yeah. Like Chris Lilly being so funny, this movie's very funny. It's full of all sorts of like innuendo and quips, and apparently a lot of that was ad-libbed. Hitchcock just told Kelly and Grant to just go for it and make all of these dirty little jokes, and see what you can get away with, see what we can keep.
That's so funny. But that's actually kind of Alfred Hitchcock's thing with dialogue is he does, even though they're psychological thrillers, horror, film noir, there's still something humorous about. It's almost like a dark humor, I guess, is the best way to put it. Is he really finds a way to meld psychological thriller with dark humor, film noir, all of these things in one, which I think is his kind of footprint.
Oh yeah, and there is definitely a dark aspect to this film.
Mm-hmm.
So once John Roby goes on this search to find this thief, he connects with a man from an insurance agency who is in Monaco investigating these burglaries because, you know, his insurance firm is on the hook to pay for them.
Mm-hmm.
And he figures this guy's got a list of everybody with jewelry worth stealing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll figure out who to keep an eye on, who might be the next target. And that's how he ends up connecting with Grace Kelly, who is the daughter of a very wealthy American woman, and she's there to find a husband. Grace Kelly's there to find a husband.
Mm-hmm.
And the mother's hilarious. I mean, she's so funny. I think she's my favorite character. But there is definitely like this dark sort of almost like a lack of caring about things, I think coming from it being so close to the end of the war. And they say things a lot of the time like, oh, what do I care if my jewelry's stolen? It's just things and it's insured anyway. And you know, and at some point, you know, I think it's the insurance guy who asks you know, Cary Grant if he killed anybody in the war, and he just goes, yes, 72. And it's like
exactly.
So there's definitely, yeah, still a little bit of, you know, this, I think, a shock of, you know, experience that a lot of people still have. And that sort of permeates even this very glitzy Monegasque world. And it gets very glitzy. And, you know, in addition to seeing all of this beautiful jewelry that they wear and all of the gorgeous outfits that Grace Kelly wears, there's this massive ball scene with, you know, all of these 18th century gowns, and everybody's in full costume, and it goes on for a little bit too long. Like, it really drags on, that last scene at the ball, frankly. But hey, if you're going to put all that money into costumes, you might as well stare at them for a while, right?
Show them off, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But he has quite a time trying to find this burglar. And
thief, Max, to catch a thief, not a murderer.
And it's in this search that he and Grace Kelly have this romance, because he pretends not to be who he is. Obviously, who would trust a known burglar?
Yeah.
And she figures it out. You know, she figures out who he really is. And thinks herself quite clever in doing so. Yeah.
You know what would be fun is to do a murder mystery party that's themed off of To Catch a Thief. So it's not a murder, but you're trying to figure out who the thief is. And maybe somebody has to be Grace Kelly, somebody has to be the main man, and
Cary Grant
has to be the thief. It's like, why? All I could think was Marlon Brando, and that's not correct.
Oh yeah, Marlon Brando. Good times.
Yeah. But I think that would be fun. Do a murder mystery party that's a burglary mystery party. It doesn't have the same ring.
Yeah, it's so interesting though. There's very few like handbags in this movie. Generally, the bags are like when they're going to the beach, and Grace Kelly's in this gorgeous like black swimsuit with this little white thing coming off of her waist and this black and white hat. And it's wild. You watch them going through the lobby, and everybody is staring at them as they go through.
Duh.
Well, duh, yeah.
That's me when I walk anywhere, and I'm just kidding.
Of course. But then she has like a little beach tote, and like when they go for a picnic, she's got a little picnic bag. But there aren't really like bags that you see. Often they're in evening situations, and they're not carrying anything.
I heard somewhere that did you ever see American Horror Story Hotel?
No.
I didn't watch the entire thing. However, I heard that Lady Gaga's character was inspired by Grace Kelly from this movie.
Interesting.
Heard. I don't know if it's true, but it's an interesting thought. Because we know Lady Gaga is very much about channeling people from years ago.
Oh yeah, she loves channeling.
Yeah, she does. She is a conduit.
I do wonder, like, what contexts, though, the Kelly bags, the sac-a-day as they were called then, were going to be used for this film, because I've even seen a lot of like the original costume sketches, and you know, back then a Kelly bag, a Kelly 35, I feel like a woman, an upper class woman, is generally using that in a traveling sense mostly.
Yes.
When they're going somewhere, not necessarily once they're there and they're just going out.
Yeah, because at the time, so this would have been the 50s, handbags were very, very small for women. It was kind of a very masculine thing to hold and carry larger bags outside of travel. So all of the bags were basically evening bags for women. You know, you got your lipstick, your mirror, and your coin purse with a couple of quarters for the evening as you go across the town.
Yeah. And we mentioned that this movie came out in 1955.
Yeah.
What other important handbag came out in 1955?
Pop quiz.
The Chanel 2.55.
Oh, well, I wasn't thinking.
Duh.
I was like, what Hermès bag?
Oh, no. But we were talking about, you know, generally about women's handbags, and that was like a huge, you know, now you can wear it over your shoulder, hands free. Like, that was a huge. So, you know, when this movie was being made,
1995 or 1995,
yeah, for context,
1955.
55, yeah. So for context, when this was being produced, that bag did not exist. That change had not come. There was no such thing as a shoulder bag or a crossbody.
No, that was far too practical. If you didn't want to look too practical, because that would be something the lower classes would do, to be practical.
Like on Gilded Age. Are you watching Gilded Age?
No, but I need to.
Oh my gosh, it's wild. One of the characters starts working as a watercolor teacher, and her aunt is like furious that she's working. The thought of it.
Yes. I mean, this time period really isn't that far from the end of where Downton Abbey left off. So the threads are still there.
Yeah.
The whole idea around working, tanning was not a thing. You know, all of these small things that are really ubiquitous today were not okay back then, or not seen as proper, right, and good.
Yeah. I love that that beach look. That's got to be one of my faves. The black and white beach look that Grace Kelly's got.
Yeah.
That, and later on, there's a scene where they're in her hotel room, her and John Roby, and she's wearing this like white column gown with this diamond necklace that turns out to be fake, but it's very dramatic with her blonde hair. Oh,
yeah.
What a beauty!
Honestly, that's one of the like most iconic scenes of her in general, with that necklace and that dress.
Yeah,
from the movie.
Yeah, I actually thought her gold ball gown at the end was a little over the top. I thought it was a little gauche. Not my fave.
Ooh, ouch!
Spicy take. Yeah.
Gauche. Yeah, I can see that, but still glamour. It's it's Hollywood. Hollywood is a little gauche with the glamour. It always has been. It's part of that Hollywood glamour. That's why they call it Hollywood glamour and not Monaco glamour.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's too funny. But what I didn't know really about Monaco, which I learned doing a little research for this. Are you watching The Crown?
No, but again, I need to. I'm not very good at keeping up with TV shows. I'm really not good.
Well, you know, the whole story about Diana, and you know how her and Dottie Al-Fayed, sorry if I'm saying the wrong name, were set up by his father, Muhammad Al-Fayed. Okay.
Yes.
It seems like a very similar thing happened with Grace Kelly and Prince Rainier of Monaco. They were set up by Aristotle Onassis, who apparently was very heavily invested in Monaco and in the Monte Carlo casino, and thought that this marriage would bring a lot of tourism to Monaco, which it did forever and ever thereafter. You know, he was right. But he basically set this whole thing up between the two of them in a very similar way.
Wow,
And
that's really
interestingly,
interesting.
when Grace Kelly married the prince, she had to pay a $2 million dowry, which today is about $20 million.
Wow. That's some royal money right there.
Yeah, and Monaco was like broke, so that basically like saved them.
Reinvigorated the country.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very,
wild.
very, very small country. Basically a city-state, right? So that makes sense.
Less than 1 square mile. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was reading about this, and apparently on the day of the big wedding, which was watched by 30 million people around the world, Aristotle Onassis watched it all unfold from the deck of his yacht in the Monaco
oh my gosh, that's
marina.
so Hunger Games.
Yeah.
That's weird. I don't know if I like that. That creeps me out. But that's so funny that he was involved because of Onassis' fame. That family has
well, later
fingers.
on he went to marry Jackie O.
Right, exactly. And that's how she got her first name. Her first... Yeah,
her second last name after Kennedy died.
I meant no, then she became Kennedy. Her first name.
That's how she became O.
Right, Jackie O. Right. Yeah. By the time the
so yeah, I thought that was a pretty interesting little tidbit. And this, I think, maybe was Grace Kelly's maybe second to last movie, because her last movie was called The Swan, interestingly, about a princess, and MGM released it on the wedding day. They held the release to time it together. Yeah.
It's so funny. She had to quit her job to become a princess.
Oh, of course. Of course.
Oh, of course she did, but it's just funny to me.
Miss Markle.
Exactly! That's what I was about to say. Take note, MM.
Yeah. But, you know, we say, like, in Bag World, provenance doesn't really affect value unless it's Jane Birkin's Birkin or Grace Kelly's Kelly.
Right.
But you can't get one of Grace Kelly's Kellys, you know?
Right. They're museum artifacts now.
Right. The royal family has no need to sell them. Yeah. And as we said, she only encountered the bag a year before she met the prince, so it's not like she was buying and selling them beforehand, you know?
Right. I mean, also
there's a few of them out there.
Just the sac de pêche. There was nothing special about it. Nobody really was too interested in it. I don't remember it being, not that I was alive at the time, but I don't remember seeing facts and figures about it being particularly special until she donned it, and then it kind of exploded.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Find more on bagworld.substack.com, and you can find even more on our Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. So like, comment, follow, and most importantly, subscribe to get more content from us and share it with all of your bag babes. Bye!